Good evening, Minnesota. Thanks for allowing us a few minutes with you. We wanted to take some time, myself, some of our commissioners in public safety, to spend some time to update you on the situation after last night's events in Minneapolis. We understand, as a state, as a country, but certainly here in Minnesota, the wounds of the end of May and the George Floyd killing are still raw. The sense of unrest and the sense of unease is still permeating. We saw it in our neighbors in Wisconsin this week, and then, of course, last night in Minneapolis. I spent today touring businesses, specifically black-owned businesses, those that are operating, not ones that it was in St. Paul, and then spent the day calling leaders in the black community and talking about what we saw and trying to make sure that this important conversation we've been having about the safety in our communities and the sense of inclusion for everyone is not lost in what is obviously lawless behavior that's dangerous, and how are we making sure we separate that. That conversation has to be done. That conversation on equity, whether it's in our schools or health outcomes, has to happen. It cannot happen when violence is prevailing. It cannot happen when our cities do not feel safe. It cannot happen when businesses are targeted at a time when we need every single business we can operating the best we can because of COVID-19. So just to be clear, those conversations that we're moving forward on need to continue to happen, but over the next 12 hours, our certain concern, as it always is safety and security and bringing peace into the city. So we just want to reassure Minnesotans that the state is there to support the city of Minneapolis. We have approximately 300 National Guard troops prepared to support the law enforcement, and keeping in mind that that is their role in support of law enforcement. We have about 250 State Patrol that have been tasked, in addition to DNR and other state assets, and then the joint powers agreements. Making sure that I would stress we need the help again of folks. 8 o'clock curfew in both Minneapolis and St. Paul. Transit is running. We want to make sure people can get out and get home, but we certainly can't allow the behavior that happened last night. It closes down the discussions. It puts people at risk. It simply is unacceptable. In a time in our nation that the unrest and the distrust is running high, Minnesota needs to be that example. I said it at the end of May, and I'll continue to say it. We have the opportunity to be defined either by what happened to George Floyd in these continued acts, or we can be defined on how we respond to them. And this gives us an opportunity that this situation that happened in the unfortunate homicide and suicide that set this off, we can't allow those situations to happen. It simply does not allow us to have the conversations that we need to have, or to live, to be quite honestly, the types of lives that we know we want and we want for our children. So I'd like to have Commissioner Harrington from DPS update on the current situation on the ground, and then we'll be glad to answer any questions with all of us. John.
Good evening. John Harrington, Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. We spent last night working together in partnership both with community and with law enforcement across the Twin Cities area. We worked in a collaborative fashion last night to restore order and to keep the peace. And that really was the mission that the governor has tasked us with, and it continues to be uppermost in our mind. So how will we do that? Today was no different than that, actually. It was a continuation of conversation with community, with Mad Dads and other community organizations about how can we keep the peace out on the streets. It was a conversation with Chief Arredondo from Minneapolis and Sheriff Hutchinson from Hennepin County and dozens of other police chiefs and sheriffs from around the Twin Cities area to make sure that tonight there will be in excess of 1,000 peace officers working to keep the peace in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. Those peace officers are dedicated to both making sure that if there was and if there is an incident where there is threats to life or threats to property, that we are in a position to rapidly and effectively respond to what's going on. the work tonight, I think, is really set up upon community policing. And one of the things I will comment upon is that I saw last night, working with Minneapolis and working with State Patrol and working with public safety officers from across the Twin Cities area, I saw them working to keep the peace and to restore order and to not let bad things get further out of hand. And I was really very gratified to watch as we were able to make progress and that we didn't overreact, even when officers went down that were injured and assaulted, even when things happened that were not part of our plan. We didn't overreact and we didn't underreact. We responded in a professional and in a measured fashion. As a consequence, there were only 2 officers injured last night, and as far as we can determine, none of the folks that were arrested, and there were almost 130 plus people that were arrested last night, none of them were injured either. To me, that's what good policing looks like. It is stopping the crime as quickly as possible, as effectively as possible, but doing it the right way. And that's what Minnesota police officers and with the support of the Minnesota National Guard, that's what we did last night, and that's what we're prepared to do tonight. I will say one thing in closing. For all of the moms and dads out there who have kids who want to come downtown and see what's going on, keep them home. Tonight's a good night for family. Tonight's a good night for them to be with you, to be right up under your arm, knowing where they are. Because if they're in downtown Minneapolis after 8 o'clock, we will enforce the curfew. And if they're downtown when windows start getting broken or other misbehavior starts, we will end up having to arrest them. And that's not what we want. It's not what Minnesota police officers and peace officers want. We want to have a peaceful night in Minneapolis and in the Twin Cities. And we're prepared to work with you and with the community to make sure that that happens.
Thanks, John. I'll echo the commissioner's words. Just keep folks home tonight. We can get this right. And I would, once again, on this occasion, we can tackle this together. And there is no percentage and no good comes out of continuing to divide us. We need to try and figure out this trust issue that is being challenged at all times in our cities amongst those who are, whether it's elected office or those that are responsible for public safety and the citizens that they're there to serve. And that is a conversation that needs to happen free of violence, free of dangerous situations, and the opportunity needs to be presented to them. So questions?
Governor, we just found out that St. Paul's also enacting a curfew. Will the response from the State and National Guard also be extended into St. Paul? Has there been conversation?
I can let one of our folks. We view it as the whole region, and I just to folks, this is the professionals that are involved in this and respond. You saw it in the last time this happened in a complex, unprecedented environment. We know these things change very quickly, so we want to make sure that those surrounding communities, the suburb communities, are also there. So I may mention, General, if you want to, talk about how we view the entire area that's under.
Brigadier General Sean Mankey, the Adjutant General. So we are liaisoning with the local law enforcement agencies in Minneapolis as well as the State Emergency Operations Center here, and we are prepared to respond in a supporting force to the local law enforcement agencies that are on the ground. So not necessarily just Minneapolis, but other areas in the metro area if needed.
Is there a plan to close any interstates? We saw that the last time the National Guard was deployed. Has that been a consideration?
Thank you.
That is an option. We saw that option work very well in May when we needed to control an area and make sure that additional folks who might be coming to join the riot were not able to access the downtown area or the area around Lake Street in that case. And so we have built a contingency plan which allows us to close the freeways if we see a need, but we have not predetermined that we will do that. We have worked with both Todd Axel and Sheriff Bob Fletcher in Ramsey County to make sure that we have a rapid response force that can get to both cities and to the suburbs around there. And we've also reached out to the sheriffs in Anoka and Washington, Dakota County to make sure a plan that will allow us to work with them as need comes up. But as of right now, we do not plan to close the freeways, but we do recognize that that is an option that we shouldn't foreclose if situation deteriorated as it did last night.
Is intelligence dictating that? There was a lot of talk before about people coming in from outstate or out of state. Are you hearing something different? Is this a different environment, you believe?
I do believe this is a different environment. We're not seeing the intelligence that indicates that we have large numbers of people coming into the cities to do this. But we do believe that it's still a prudent measure to be able to control ingress and exit from the downtown area if we begin to have looting. In part because last night, as we noted toward the end of the night, several of the looting cases involved motor vehicles that were carrying off the things that were stolen from stores and restaurants and from pharmacies. And so clearly those folks have to get from point A to point B, and the freeways are a way to be able to slow that progress down and allow the State Patrol, which will be doing proactive traffic enforcement tonight in and around the Twin Cities area, to be able to do what they do best, which is to make those kind of traffic stops and make arrests as necessary.
With this curfew, Governor, you and Commissioner Harrington were saying don't come down if you have kids, family in the area. What about restaurants and businesses and patios? I mean, do they have to comply with this curfew?
They do have to comply with the curfew, and that's the unfortunate part of this. We did mention, and we wanted to make sure, transit is still operating. We want to make sure that people who need to get out can get out. This, again, the disruption that this causes at a time when we cannot afford it. We have businesses that are doing their best. We're doing our best to continue to manage the pandemic that is still raging, and to have to close those businesses down on a warm summer night, that's a tough one. But they do need to comply with that, and we're asking people to clear that area. And then we have to, again, as a society, come to the idea that a lot of these are social compacts of us just deciding to live close to one another and live in these vibrant communities requires us to have the trust of law enforcement and for us to enforce those. And that's exactly what we tend to do tonight.
General Mankey, we are seeing obvious presence already, the National Guard along Niplet Mall just stationing and posting up. Are people in like the outer ring neighborhoods and suburbs of Minneapolis and St. Paul going to start seeing a presence of National Guard trucks tonight?
The Minnesota National Guard will go where the Minnesota National Guard needs to go, as determined by working with our local law enforcement agencies and our State Emergency Operations Center. So we're prepared to posture to move if we need to move. I couldn't tell you at this time where we're going to be because we know there's certain areas there will be, but we don't know everywhere that will be because it's a fluid environment.
One more question. How easy will it be for you guys to mobilize if you have to go to the suburbs?
We are, so our package that mobilizes with organic transportation, so we're capable of transporting ourselves around the metro area.
Governor, you talked about the business owners having to comply. There's some that were boarding up today. We've seen some go to their own means to try to protect their businesses, but there's a curfew tonight. What message would you have to those either business owners or even homeowners that might be interested in trying to protect their own properties?
No, and I'm very empathetic to the people who do this, and I think what I would say is different this time with the communication, with the ability to respond, is these are businesses that should expect that we collectively do law enforcement so that each one of us doesn't have to do it. We don't want to live in a society where everybody has to protect their own house, their own business, but I understand their desire to do so. What I would tell them is this is a robust plan, that there is good communication going on, that these situations that we're worried about and that we've seen in Kenosha, where you start to see folks who are armed civilians start to become a very dangerous situation. And so what I would encourage them, take all the precautions you need. I want to just say again, I'm very empathetic to that desire because it is heartbreaking. It's one of the reasons we went down to those businesses. And just to be very clear, and this was of course in downtown, but as we saw in May, these are black-owned businesses in many cases, and these are folks that we have high unemployment rates. These youth that are down there, they're getting hit from every direction. Not in school. We're not being able to get that part figured out. We have for black youth that we do of anyone else. Those are types of situations that if there's folks down there working and now they lose their job or they have to go home, we have to do a better job of making sure that we're keeping those businesses open. We've got the trust of those businesses. And so for tonight, what I would tell them is you're going to see that presence. That we're going to be there. Don't go down there. And certainly we're asking people to stay away from this activity. If the curfew is in effect, we should be able to tamp this thing down.
All right, Governor, we got to get you back. Thank you, everybody.
We will update as needed throughout the night.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.